Hey everyone! It's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink and listen to the story No Escape, Zombies Take Over Main Street, USA. I didn't go for nostalgia. I went for a quiet proof that life could feel normal again. The esplanade between Disneyland and Disney California Adventures still smelled like sunscreen and popcorn, even through my KN95. Families lined up under the Harbor Boulevard security tents, touching elbows with the metal detector frames. A cast member with the sunburst name tag Jenna waved a wand around my camera bag and pointed me toward the turnstiles. It was mid-me morning. March light bounced off Main Street, USA's windows as the dapper dance harmonized from the trolley. I took one picture of the partner statue in the hub and texted my sister. Made it? Crowds aren't too bad. Will pace myself. My name is Alex Chen, 34. I work in product ops, not heroics. My plan for the day was simple. Rope drop, Space Mountain, lunch at Plaza Inn, fireworks if I could keep my feet from protesting. I didn't realize that by sunset I would know how to tear a souvenir stand apart for parts and how to speak into a security radio without sounding like my lungs were shaking. When the first guest fell near City Hall, I thought it was heat. A pair of guest services cast members knelt beside him. One called into a shoulder mic, another radioed for an alpha unit. Disneyland's on-site first aid. The man convulsed. A line of people formed a polite semicircle as if waiting for a parade, phones up, eyes curious. A security host cleared a path with two gentle sweeps of her arms. The man gasped, sat up too fast and grabbed one of the cast members by the sleeve. Oh, he didn't bite her? Not the way movies teach you to fear, but he latched onto her forearm and sank his teeth in hard enough that her voice stopped in her throat. The sound wasn't cinematic. It was dry and real. Like a stapler driven through cardboard, a different cast member shouted, "Stop!" The semicircle broke into diagonals and then chaos. Strollers pivoted and knocked shins, balloons bashed faces and ridiculous apologies. The omnibus had to brake so fast its bell rattled. A security guard with a greying brush cut, later I'd know him as Morales, went low to pry the man away. He looked practiced, not panicked. That steadiness lasted about 30 seconds. Two more people staggered on Main Street, eyes unfocused, arms stiff. They weren't coordinated, but they were determined. Like someone walking forward in a strong wind. They collided with bodies, and then the breathing got louder. Emotion spreads faster than anything. Within a minute, the street felt like water boiling, bubbles of people rowing and rolling. Loudspeaker chimes hit, and a calm recorded voice asked us to proceed to the nearest exit in an orderly fashion. The words medical situation hung in the air like a fragile bridge. The park still promised orderly, but Tomorrowland shouted too. Someone screamed, "Run!" in Spanish near the hub. Another body fell near Jolly Holiday Bakery. A sandwich slid out of a wax wrapper and smeared across bricks like paint. I don't have combat reflexes. I have crowd reflexes. I stepped toward the castle because my body decided height and sight lines would help, and because the castle still promised story, not statistics. At the drawbridge to Sleeping Beauty Castle, I met a knot of people making the same calculation. A guy in a faded LFD shirt with Louise stitched on the chest, retired, as I'd later learn, held his hands high and open like he was shaping air. Slowly, he said to nobody and everybody, "Don't run or you'll fall." A woman with a badge reel clipped to her small backpack. Priya, an ER nurse at UCI Medical Center, was wrapping a scarf around a teenager's cut knuckles. The teen WW wore a lanyard of enamel pins and a name tag that read, "Jenna Attractions." Jenna's hand shook, but her eyes were doing math, flicking between exits and crowd flows. A father with two kids clutched their wrists like they were strings tied to his heart. Mark, the name he gave me later, Sophie and Leo. Sophie was the only one among us who looked like she believed the castle could make things better. Inside, Louise said as a wave of people from Fantasy Fair surged past. "It's a choke point, but we can hold it. Security says exit," Jenna said, pointing toward Main Street, where the flow had become a tangle. but the S-blends clogged if there's pushing. A sound cut her off, something between a groan and a metronome. It came from an older man near the partner statue, eyes losing focus, jaw working like he had a mouth full of sand. He reached for a woman's wrist. She yanked back and tripped. The motion brought more attention than the recorded announcement ever could. The tide turned. We crossed the drawbridge into the castle with the guilty feeling of people retreating into a painting. Cool shade swallowed us. The diorama of Aurora slept behind thick glass. Miniature trees made still beauty from plastic. The irony hit nobody. Our hands were on reality now. We shouldered a souvenir kiosk until its rubber wheels jammed into stone. Louise scanned for weight and leverage like he was evaluating a car wreck. "We need posts," he said, long and strong. "The stanchions," Jenna said, already moving. She sprinted to the rope post from the Royal Hall and yanked one free. It came up with a metal cough. "These unscrew," she said, like it mattered to name the victory. We built the castle into a bottleneck. Benches stacked, stanchions wedged at angles to turn the doorway into a maze. Only we understood. Priya triaged with what she had. A purse, first aid kit, a stop, Weibel lead tourniquet she carried bigaltital. Because emergency nurses don't believe in luck. 2 bandanas. She examined Jenna's hand and whistled softly. A shard of plastic was embedded. "You'll keep full function," she said, "but you need to breathe with me. In, out." Morales, the security guard with the brush cut, stumbled in with 2 other security hosts pushing a churro cart like a battering ram. "We try the esplanade?" he asked. Nobody in particular. "Blocked. People outside the gates are pushing in because they think there's safety here. APD is trying to clear Harbour Bavidi." He slotted the cart next to the kiosk, handed me his spare UHF radio, and spoken to his shoulder mic like he was talking to a stubborn relative. "Security to ops. We have a shelter at Castle. High guest density. Multiple medically altered persons in Maine tomorrow." "Fantasy. We are holding ops. Copies?" A steady voice replied. "Units. Establish muster points. Guides to exits, not through pinch points." Priya looked at me like we needed a quick translation. "We are a muster point now," she said. "Congratulations. The first infected found the drawbridge barricade 20 minutes later. Not because they were tracking us, but because noise pulled in corners. Their movements were slow but singular. They weren't dueling, and they weren't afraid. The first one, a teenage boy in a UCSB hoodie, walked straight into the rope web, pressed and kept pressing. His mouth worked without sound. His eyes slid past us like we were light. Luis used a stanchion base like a shield and pushed back without anger, like guiding someone in a hospital who didn't know where the hallway ended. "Easy," he said to the air. "Don't let hands get close." Priya had been watching patterns. "They're attracted by continuous sound," she said. "Not bright flashes or motion. We can use that." "How?" Mark asked, arms around his kids. Leo squeezed a plush Gru so hard the ears bent. "Speakers," Jenna said, sweating but focused. "Parade route has portable cabinets, and we have a PA just outside the castle for show spill. If we can turn continuous sound on there, maybe they'll clump." "Not we," Louise said. "You don't go out alone. I know the breaker panel." Jenna said, "Attractions training, and I know where a spare key lives because it used to jam." "If you're going," I said before my brain could vote no, "I'm going with you and we take the radio." Morales peeled off a maglite torch and handed it to me along with the spray bottle of EPA-listed disinfectant from the churro station. Priya added a trauma shears and a pack of gloves. It felt absurd to prep, like we were going to change a tire. We moved in a 3-person file, me with the maglite and the disinfectant up front, Jenna behind me, Louis anchoring with a stanchion. Outside, the hub looked like a photograph taken at slow shutter speed. Everything moved and nothing made sense. The infected didn't sprint. They drifted like a tide seeking low ground, drawn by continuous sound. The omnibus idling, someone crying without breathing between sobs, a smartphone blasting a shaky live stream. Jenna slid along the castle's exterior wall and popped a camouflaged panel near a show speaker. "Here," she whispered. "Zone control. If I loop the park music quietly here and kill the castle's interior speakers, we become quieter than the outside." She flipped 2 tiny switches and twisted a dial. The park's instrumental version of When You Wish Upon a Star feathered into the air, so low it felt more like memory than music. The infected nearest us pivoted toward it, as if someone had. Dee nudged their shoulders. Back inside, the difference was immediate. The drawbridge no longer felt like the only line between us and a flood. The infected drifted toward the hub's sound and clumped. We watched it happen from the castle balcony. Jenna knew a staff door that led upstairs. From there, the park became a map. Main Street was a corridor of stalled motion. A family stranded on a curb. The firehouse door propped open. A mother trying to keep a stroller turned away from the slow-moving figures who seemed to forget to blink on the radio. Fragments units at Adventureland reporting multiple bridge by pirates jammed. Montreal not in service guest staging at Golden Horseshoe. If you're in Galaxy's Edge, do not come through Big Thunder Trail. Repeat. Pirates? I asked, thinking of the dark boat ride in New Orleans Square. Morales answered from below. Heard from Jackson down there. They locked Blue Bayou doors. There's a service corridor behind the kitchen. It leads near Haunted Mansion. Jenna tilted her head like she was listening for backstage whispers only she could hear. We can chain this, she said. Castle holds, pirates holds, guests in Frontierland can stack chairs in the Golden Horseshoe. We need food and water, Priya said, and clean cloth, and to tell people not to run. Falls cause more injuries than anything. Supplies? I asked. Jenna's brain flipped to inverted maps. Refreshment corner, plaza in Troubadour Tavern backstage. First aid near Plaza Point. Custodial has gloves and masks in backstage east. There's a Castonley Harbour gate behind Buzz Lightyear. Vehicles there too. Maintenance carts, maybe a van behind Tomorrowland, I said, picturing the berm and the hotels along Harbour Boulevard. We could exit there maybe, Morales said. It's a secure gate. We need credentials or tools. He glanced at the mag light and then at the Styon Louise held. We'll figure it out. He paused, listening to the radio. Ops says APD is staging at Catella Avenue, but it's messy. Outside is not safer than inside yet. We settled into restless work. Priya set up a triage corner just inside the castle away from the line of sight. She used AED pads as make-do adhesive for bandages when tape ran out and wrote times on forearms with a Sharpie. She wasn't performing movie miracles. She irrigated a cut with bottled water, stabilized a wrist with a rolled spirit jersey, and kept people talking. Name, she'd say, and when someone gave it, their breathing smoothed because names are anchors. Louise organized the barricade with quiet competence. He taught Mark how to brace a weight without using his back. He gave Sophie and Leo jobs that mattered but wouldn't break them, counting packs of pretzels like treasure, keeping a hand sanitizer bottle upright, handing Priya wipes. He put me on ladder duty. Castle balcony, eyes on the hub, radio in hand, report patterns. It felt like teamwork, the way you feel a boat's balance and waves. That group on Main, I said into the radio. Blue stroller, red hoodie, stuck near Penny Arcade. They keep trying to go against the flow. Copy, Morales said. sending 2 on the left flank. Not police, not soldiers, 2 cast members in plaid vests, guest relations of all people. They moved with practiced calm, hands open and visible, voices pitched to be heard without being loud. They angled their bodies to create space and nudged the family into the opening like crossing guards ushering kids over Ball Road. The infected didn't react to them. The infected reacted to sound. One of the guest relations hosts reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and set a soft white noise app on the curb. The nearest infected turned toward it like moths to a lamp, gentle and absent. Smart, Priya said when I described it to her. Continuous, soothing. We concede those. Jenna nodded. We have white noise fans for some shows. Her brain solved a new diagram and drew a new arrow. But we'll need power. Power is my chew. Arch, said a new voice. A man stepped into our improvised fortress holding a tool bag that had seen more parking lots than living rooms. Ethan, maintenance electrician, his badge had a photo the color of old receipts. Spoke to my lead. We're keeping the central energy plant humming, UPS on critical show controls, but if we want fans or speakers, we do smart and low draw. Ethan, Jenna said with visible relief, we need to light the balcony and the interior stairs slow. People are tripping. Copy! He pointed his chin at me. You the one with the radio? Just a holder, I said. Good enough, he replied, and set to work running a string of LED work lights from a backstage outlet Jenna showed him, deliberately dim. The castle became a softly lit chapel where you could see without being seen. By mid-afternoon, Tomorrowland sounded like a machine with a broken gear, little squeals in a loop. The infected weren't getting faster, but they were getting more. We watched a group near Staroa stiff leg into each other like wind-up toys. The recorded evacuation messages never rose to panic. Their politeness became bizarrely moving, like someone asking you to exit a dream through an appropriate door. We heard from Jackson at Pirates. They had guests in the load area, lights on full, animatronics, and frozen smiles. Kitchen staff passed out cups of water from Blue Bayou like they were serving a long, quiet dinner. Someone had wedged a bakery rack in a doorway to make a barrier. We're fine for now, Jackson said over a borrowed security radio. But Adventureland is flooding. We'll need a back exit. Backstage corridor by New Orleans Square goes past Haunted Mansion to the parade building, Jenna said. If they can make the yard. She didn't finish. We all knew, was doing heavy lifting. Around 5, as gold hour made the castle stones glow like oranges, a man in a Griffith Observatory hoodie slammed into our barricade with a velocity we hadn't seen yet. He had dried blood around his mouth like he'd eaten something he couldn't taste, but his eyes had no malice. They had absence. He pushed and pushed, weight behind it, and the web flexed. Behind him, 3 more were coming. Not sprinting, but not distracted either. The gentle systems we'd built were about to get tested by mass positions, Louise said softly. His voice had the gravity of a bell. Do not lean into them. Take force. Redirect. Hands clear. We held. I wish that sentence could be a full chapter because holding is slow and it aches. The churro cart rattled, the stanchions bent and sang a long, low metallic note. Mark stood behind me, elbow braced against the wall, body a counterweight I didn't know I needed. Sophie and Leo sat on the floor with Priya, who told them a story in a normal voice about Tiana building her restaurant, stirring invisible gumbo with a plastic spork. And it worked. It worked because their chins lifted and their breath made sense. One of the infected reached through an opening in the barricade and grabbed my sleeve. 2 fingers hooked fabric. My skin didn't feel teeth, just pressure. Training I didn't have, but had learned in minutes fired. Back away from grip points. I shrugged the coat off that arm and slid sideways. Luis pivoted his stanchion base and pressed the wrist gently to the side like he was lowering a car window. "Good," he said to me and to himself. "Good. Don't escalate." It wasn't heroic, it was procedure, it was firefighter calm repurposed. It kept our hands intact. We needed a new plan. Holding worked as a tactic. It wasn't a strategy. Jackson's update from Pirates was steady, but thin. Still good, but Adventureland pressure increasing. On the radio, Ops said what we feared. Monorail remains inoperable. The Esplanade was a crush. Harbour had become a line of parked sirens twinkling without moving. Outside was not a destination yet. Jenna leaned against the wall and drew a map on the dust with her finger. Castle as a circle. Fantasyland like petals behind it. Matterhorn, small world a berm. There isn't a full util here, she said, catching my eye. Because pop culture lies to you. That's Florida. Anaheim has basements, service corridors, and backlot roads. Closest controlled exit, that doesn't mean Maine is backstage east behind Buzz Lightyear, and Star Tours out by the Harbour Cast Gate. There are vehicles there, maintenance carts, maybe a shuttle. Gates locked, Morales said. Keys? Luis asked. Ethan tapped his tool bag. Locks have screws, gates have hinges, last resort. We popped the pin, but we'll need time and to keep sound away from us while we do it. We concede white noise elsewhere, Priya said. Small speakers, battery fans. She looked down at Sophie and Leo. And we need to move the kids before evening when we can't read the room anymore. I thought of the Matterhorn, the mountain with a roller coaster rattling through its ribs. It was tall, hollow, with maintenance stairs inside and a backstage area behind it. What about routing behind Matterhorn to backstage east? I asked. Stay off the hub? Jenna nodded. We take Fantasyland side paths past Royal Theatre, behind Pinocchio. There's a service gate by Matterhorn that opens to backstage north that connects through to the submarine voyage service drive and to backstage east if we hug the berm. She tapped air maps only she could see, but a section is exposed near the Montreal beam. We keep noise low. We might slip by. Pirates group? Mark asked. Jackson's route goes the other way. Morales said New Orleans Square Yard to Parade Building, then along Rivers of America backstage to Critter Country. If they make the Parade Gate to Ball Road, they can link with Mickey Friend structure. He swallowed. We can't be everywhere. Priya put a hand on his shoulder. We take ours. We share what we learn. She glanced at Jenna. You good to lead? Jenna's hand, the one we'd bandaged, flexed. She inhaled through her nose, held, exhaled. I know the doors, she said, not bragging. Let's gear up. Gear looked like this. Child-sized ear protection for Sophie and Leo to keep incidental noise low. Ponchos turned into sling packs for water, trash grabber tools from custodial for distance without a harm, stanchion posts cut with Ethan's hacksaw into two lighter poles with rounded ends, not to injure, but to redirect. Priya tucked gauze, gloves, and a roll of painter's tape into a drawstring bag. Morales gave us 2 extra radios with fresh batteries. I pocketed extra masks, not because they'd stopped the infection. We didn't know what this was, but because bloodborne pathogens training lives in all our heads now. We didn't call it a convoy. That felt too heavy. We called it a walk. Jenna went first, me half a step behind. Luis floating the rear with his firefighter's peripheral vision. Morales ranging left whenever an intersection needed a check. Priya walked in the middle with Mark and the kids, telling a story about Montreals that connected cities so gently you could read without losing your place. Ethan moved where the wires lived, pulling power to low for the paths we crossed, turning on emergency lights 2 seconds before our feet touched the stairs and off 2 seconds after, Fantasyland felt like an abandoned photo album, Dumbo's ears stilled mid-flight, storybook landboats sleeping at their dock. We passed the Royal Theatre. Tulle dresses hung backstage like pale flags. The air smelled like powdered sugar and bleach. Outside sound faded. The castle's music turned low and constant, drew most infected to the hub. The ones we did see in Fantasyland did not chase, they fixed on any sound that continued, a cracked water fountain hissing, an ice cream freezer humming. We stepped wide of those like our bees we didn't want to disturb. At the Matterhorn service gate, Jenna pulled a key from behind a light fixture in a move she swore every tech did, and nobody wrote down. The gate clicked and swung into a strip of asphalt no guest ever sees. A white maintenance van idled 40 yards away. A figure in a high-vis vest stood next to it, posture careful. When he waved, it wasn't urgent, it was almost shy. "Tim," he said when we got close. "Transportation, we were waiting." The van wasn't escape, it was a sound lure. Inside, 3 battery fans hummed against the windows, sat on a loop of white noise. Ethan smiled at the simple elegance of it. "Smart," he told Tim. "Let's use it to pull them away from the backstage east corridor." We positioned the van like you'd set a chest piece, visible from 2 approaches, but not ours. Tim nodded once like a bow and stayed with it. He insisted. "I'll be fine," he said. "They don't run." I believed him because fear had not yet smudged his voice. The corridor to backstage east narrowed along the berm. To the right, the skeletal frames of show buildings. To the left, trees that hid the world of sight lines and music. A single infected figure in a plaid shirt moved across our path and stopped listening. He wasn't looking at us. He was orienting to a compressor cycling on and off. We froze, 5 breaths, 10. When the compressor stopped, the man took 3 steps, then 3 more toward the steady hum of the van. We slid through the gap his absence made. At Backstage East, the harbour gate stood tall and official. Beyond it, a sliver of Harbour Boulevard, hotel signs, an Anaheim resort transit bus angled across lanes. The city looked like somebody had paused a carousel mid-turn. Nothing was where it should be. A maintenance cart, electric low, is parked to one side of the gate. Behind it, a fleet of similar carts, a white E350 with facilities Stenkel, in faint blue on the door and a rolling ladder. "Locks of best core," Ethan said, peering at the gate. "Standard. I can remove the screws on the strike plate." He looked at Morales. "You got authority for this?" Morales stared at the street outside for 2 long seconds. "Authority is keeping these people alive." Ethan's power driver wed low, low, low. He made it purr instead of scream. He caught each screw with his palm so they didn't ping. Sweat ran down his neck like pencil lines. Priya and I stood on either side, our poles at the ready to guide, not strike. If any hands reached through, none did. The infected had pulled at a white noise station we couldn't see, drawn like iron filings to a magnet. The gate swung. Air smelt different. Asphalt heat, bus exhaust, chlorinated hotel pools. Harbour was not safe. Sirens lay like beads on a wire. Cars locked in a slow-motion arguments, but it was different. And different meant options. Anaheim PD uniforms moved in a wedge 2 blocks down, trying to cut a corridor. A paramedic leaned over someone on a curb with the kind of focus that can push a city away. Van Louise asked, "Cart first?" Jenna replied. "It's quiet, low profile. We hugged the curb to Manchester and cut to Catella. Cart drivers use it to shuttle to Team Disney Anaheim sometimes. She said it like a recipe. We keep our convoy tight. No honking, no shouting, no screaming if you can help it. If you trip, say down once. We loaded like we'd practiced in a world that never existed. Kids in the center, adults around. Mark's face looked like a map with all the place names rubbed off. He had been holding his kids up with nothing but stubbornness and a belt of hope. "We'll go to UCI," Priya told him. As much a promise to herself, they'll be staging mass triage by now. We rolled out. The cart's whine was a mosquito compared to the sirens. It didn't register at a distance. We tucked behind planters and paused at wide openings. A group of infected stood in the shaded entry of a hotel, perfectly spaced along the glass, as if waiting for a bus that never came. All of TKE Hem faced the lobby water wall where recirculating pumps turned water into one steady sound. None of them moved toward us. I didn't know whether to be relieved or newly frightened. 2 blocks down at Catella, a squad of APD officers in helmets and soft armor was pushing an improvised line. Not against us, not against anybody, against confusion. An officer saw us, clocked that we didn't look like a threat, and opened his stance. We slid through the gap. Morales lifted his radio. "Security to ops," he said, voice steady. "Castle Group is exiting Harbour Gate. Civilians with us, heading east to UCI triage." Ops answered with a voice that sounded like the park itself when it whispers, "Secrets only cast here." "Copy." Pirate Group reports movement to Parade Gate. DCA is establishing shelter at Grizzly Peak. Continue at State College Boulevard. We had to stop. A stalled city bus made a wall. The driver sat behind the wheel with both hands on it, like the bus would float if he let go. A woman in school scrubs was directing people off the sidewalk and into the bus like it was a gym during a hurricane. "Inside, if you can't walk," she said with the calm of 1,000 pickups. She turned to us and set her concerns in order. "Kids first. Kids aren't staying," Priya said gently, but not apologetically. "We're aiming for hospital staging, but if you have water," the woman handed over a sealed gallon jug and a pack of paper cups with the motion of somebody who doesn't hesitate. "Godspeed," she said. I believed she meant it. UCI Medical Center wasn't a straight shot. Nothing was. We had to take Gene Autry Way to the city drive, hugging edges, slowing for people who needed the opposite of what we had, safe stillness. On the overpass we saw the Angel Stadium, halo like a hug for a city that suddenly needed one. The red frame made me think of big things that had felt steady and now looked like toys. At the UCI perimeter, organized tape and vests turned space into sense. ICS boards, that incident command system I'd only ever seen on the laminated training sheets, stood on easels, whiteboard markers, scrawling boxes named operations, logistics, planning. Priya's voice changed timbre. She spoke to triage like she'd been plugging into that frequency for years. "We've got 2 kids, one with scraped knee, one uninjured, one cast member with laceration hand, multiple with contusions, potential exposures, but none recently bitten that we saw. We need PPE and guidance." "Yellow tag for the hand," a triage nurse replied, flipping through a mental deck of start protocols. "Green for most kids, both green and less symptomatic. Parents, we keep families together." The nurse looked at me at our weird little convoy of Parkin City. "You came from inside. Any secure points, Castle?" I said, "Pirates, Golden Horseshoe, DCA at Grizzly Peak." She wrote the words down like she might send them to someone who could make more of them than a sentence. We didn't dump responsibility at the hospital and dissolve. Morales needed to get back if he could. Jenna's face said she would go where her crew was if there was a safe path. Louise looked at the castle on a map he could see, even with his eyes closed. Mark looked at his kids. Sophie had her headphones on and was tracing circles on Leo's back like she was drawing a map to bedtime. "Stay," I told Mark. "Please." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, because the word please can be a tool if you aim it right. "We'll tell them you're here," I added, not knowing who them was, but trusting that being found matters. We split. It wasn't clean. Priya stayed to work with triage because giving her skill set to the middle of the storm isn't heroism, it's habit. Ethan and Morales decided to attempt a return route along Disney Way, a back channel that might let them reach backstage east again. Jenna squeezed my arm once. She wanted me to go back too, I could tell, but not if I would become cargo instead of help. "If it looks wrong, you don't do it," she said. "We made it this far because we kept promises small." We tried Disney Way at dusk. The sky over California Adventure glowed a gentle orange. Grizzly Peak silhouette made the fake bear look like a real one turned to stone by responsibility. In the hotel zone, infected figures stood in lobby light like guests waiting for a room. The calm was almost worse than frenzy. It made you think you could explain your way through it. We turned at the Tiffany's curve. Locals know it by the glass, and approached backstage east from the outside. This time, the gate was still open, our screws in Ethan's pocket. A maintenance card had been parked across the gap like a placeholder. Morales rolled it aside with a muttered apology to nobody. Inside the gate, the alley's quiet felt like a museum after hours. We swept it with our eyes and our breath, which had become spotlights. The castle wasn't miraculously safe. It was a choice that had held long enough to mean something. When we re-entered through Fantasyland, the low music still played at the hub, steady as a nurse's hum. Our barricade stood. Louise was still there, sweat salt tracks on his temples. Priya's triage corner now had a clipboard and a Sharpie-written sign that read, "Tell us if you feel dizzy." Mark's absence was expected and good. "We made it," Jenna said into the radio. "Harbour Gate route works of quiet. UCI triage open, DCA shelter confirmed. Pirates," Jackson replied with a small victory compressed into words. "We're out the parade gate, ball row staging, lost nobody." The sky over rivers of America reflected a strange quiet. The Mark Twain steamboat sat at its dock like an anchor. A young cast member in a blue custodial shirt, Arich Kelly, moved along the walkway, spreading a line of white noise machines like she was planting a garden. She set each one down with a small pat. The infected along the far bank oriented to the sound like sunflowers seeking morning. We had decisions to make, and none of them were permanent. That night, we turned the castle into a way station. We rotated watch on the balcony and called ops with observed patterns. We tapped the building's bones gently for what we needed and left the rest intact. Because if walls remember how you treat them, you want your name not to taste like fear. We passed out food from Plaza Inn. Rolls, not the chicken, water from any tap, Jenna said, past building checks, wipes from custodial that smelled like citrus and good intentions. It wasn't utopia. A teenage boy panicked and tried to shove past the barricade. Louise absorbed his momentum like a judo move and folded him into a corner with a blanket and 3 minutes of quiet. A woman insisted she had to go back down Main Street because her husband would be there. Priya held her hands and said, "We will write his name on this paper and we will hand it to every radio between here and the firehouse." She did, and we did. We weren't lying. We were building a network inside a storm. Around midnight, ops came over the radio with the thing my heart didn't know how to hold. APD reports corridors open along harbour and Catella in slow intervals. Guests at Pirates and Castle may begin controlled exits and under direction. The voice made the word controlled sound like a lullaby sung by a city to its children. We didn't stampede, we queued. Of course we queued. Disneyland teaches you how to do that with grace. We took small groups, we carried those who needed it. We let Sophie and Leo be the last kids to cross the drawbridge because somebody said they had earned it. Without saying earned like a medal, they waved at Aurora's diorama because children put grace where adults put metaphor. At the harbour gate, the night air moved like a hand over our heads. Harbour Boulevard wasn't healed, it was functional. Officers made human corridors with their bodies and their patience. A dispatcher's voice came from a cruiser speaker. Proceed to check-in stations. Family, stay together. If you are dizzy, Tell a person in a vest. It echoed the language Priya had written in Sharpie. We had brought a note from the castle to the city, and it spoke in both directions. When I could finally let my spine uncoil, I sat on a curb outside a 7-Eleven, whose lights felt exaggerated. A community emergency response team volunteer handed me a bottle of water in a granola bar. I hadn't tasted anything all day. This tasted like plywood and victory. Jenna sat next to me, her bandaged hand held high like she'd just asked a question in class. Louise stood because some men don't sit until other people do. Ethan dozed with his cheek on his tool bag like a construction worker on a lunch break. Morales talked into his radio with the slow, deliberate energy of someone who had found the tempo that would not break anything. "Tomorrow," Jenna said, "we'll have better maps." "Tomorrow," Luis echoed, not because he believed in tomorrow's ease, but because he believed in tomorrow. I looked back toward the castle. Even from here I could see its silhouette, the soft lights still on. The music at the hub had gone silent for the night. The white noise machines would keep their gentle watch. The park wasn't a fortress, not really. It had become a system of care, of redirection, of small decisions aligned like tiles to make a path. I didn't know what the infection was or how the world outside would reshape itself to meet it. I knew the specifics we'd learned mattered. That continuous sound drew the infected like gravity. That speed wasn't their weapon, but persistence was. That calm turned space into structure. That harbor gate could be turned from boundary into doorway with screws and a steady hand. Days later, when someone compiled a binder labeled Disneyland Park Improvised Shelter SOP, it would include bullet points that read like fairy tale rules. Keep music low and external. To draw infected away, turn internal speakers off where people shelter. White noise works better than melody. Play sources where you want clumping away from people. Barricades should redirect, not provoke. Build mazes, not walls. Radios brief, precise, no adjectives. Harbor gate route viable at low sound levels, keep groups small. Pirates load area good shelter if Blue Bayou Kitchen supplies accessed. First aid supplies, gloves, bandages, tourniquets, AED pads as adhesive. Children, ear protection, jobs with purpose stories. But in the moment there was no binder, only a park we loved and a city we depended on. We had turned a symbol into a system. We had kept promises small, and they had held. In the dim space before sleep, sitting on the curb while the city drew its next breath, I realized the most useful lesson Disneyland had taught us wasn't about fantasy, it was about flow. The park had always been a machine for moving humans together without hurting each other. When the world cracked, that machine didn't vanish. It turned its gears to face a new problem. We, temporary custodians with radios and stanchions and stories, learned how to listen to it. If you ask me what bravery looked like that day, I'd say it looked like a janitor setting down a white noise machine and patting it like a pet. It looked like an electrician catching a screw in his palm so it wouldn't ping. It looked like a nurse writing, "Tell us if you feel dizzy," and block letters big enough to be read by a shaking hand. It looked like a kid tracing circles on her brother's back so he would feel the map of a safe place he couldn't see. We didn't slay monsters, we managed flow. We redirected force, we shared maps. The castle didn't save us, we saved each other in the castle's shadow. And when the music returned days later, low and careful, and the gates opened in careful intervals, the first note I heard wasn't a song. It was a soft, steady hush, of a white noise machine sowing calm in a garden that had learned to grow it. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams